Hey everybody, thank you for tuning in to Performance Anxiety. I am your host, Mark, and I wanted to take a second and thank our sponsor, AKG, for sending us their Podcaster Essentials kit. It has an incredible Lyra mic and a wonderful set of headphones. It's an economical and high-quality way to start your own podcast. Today, we have the distinct pleasure of speaking with concert promoter extraordinaire, Danny Zelisko. He's worked with the biggest names in rock and roll, and he's just released a book that's full of great stories and pictures. He talks about DJing a Led Zeppelin gig, helping Hall of Fame pitcher Randy Johnson warm up, flying to LA on an airmail flight, and the general day-to-day life of a concert promoter. It's a fascinating look behind the scenes of how your favorite rock band end up in your favorite venues. Pick up the book on Amazon or at dzplive.com. Follow Danny on social media. Follow us at Performance ANX, and we gladly accept coffee at ko-fi.com/performance anxiety. Merch is available at performanceanx.threadless.com. Rate and review us. It really helps us get in front of new people. Now get ready for an all-access show with Danny Zelisko on Performance Anxiety, part of the Pantheon Podcast Network.
Hey there, it's Danny Zelisko. I am the author of All Access. Occupation Concert Promoter. That's the name of the book. I'm the concert promoter who was crazy enough to write a book about all of my friends and all the crazy things that have taken place over the last 50 years of rock. I can't be that old. Check out my book at dzplive.com or at Amazon, where all good things are sold. You can also get a copy of the Kindle version of the book there. Meanwhile, you're listening to Performance Anxiety right here.
Excellent. I want to thank you for joining me. And this is going to be fun. This is interesting. I've been reading the book and reading about you and on this, and listening to some of the other interviews, and wow, it's
Thanks.
Crazy.
It's great. I'm glad you like it.
Oh, very much so. It's kind of mind-boggling what you've done and who you've worked with.
Yeah, it's a mouthful, ain't it?
Yeah, it is. But what I like to find out, though, is kind of how you got there. I know that you're a big sports fan, and you grew up in the Chicago area.
Correct. And growing up in Chicago in the 50s, 60s meant, the White Sox, the Cubs, the Bears, the Blackhawks. I don't think there were any Bulls until later on in the 60s.
Right.
I don't think they had NBA there for a while, but we're big time fans of baseball, football, and hockey while we grew up there. And, at the time when we were growing up, the only real exposure we had to music were the AM radio stations there and Ed Sullivan.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's the only place you got music then. Remember, this is forget about before the computer. It was before Rolling Stone existed.
Yeah.
I mean, this truly is, by comparison, what young people would call the olden days. That's what we used to call them.
Yeah.
When we were kids, when our parents would talk to us about stuff from when they were kids, and they referred to it as the olden days, whimsically. And in my old days, I mean, that's what you did. You played those sports, and you followed those sports, and you went to school, and and if you were smart, you kept your mouth shut. But other than that, I mean, we didn't have music. We didn't have social media. Kids didn't have anything that resembled what they have today. I mean, Beatles made it so that suddenly product manufacturers are aiming more at kids other than for Christmas or Halloween or Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
I mean, or their birthdays. But now, I mean, they had a whole new thing to promote and make money off of, which was music, selling it to kids. So they encouraged a lot of bands, and bands were encouraged that appealed to a younger demographic after the Beatles came. And then you saw all of these kids that were pre-10-year-olds and tweeners at 11 and 12, and then the teenagers at 13. Everybody suddenly there was a band for everybody. And there's something for everybody, but that didn't exist before then. And nowadays, it's pretty much you appeal to different age groups with the music. But unfortunately, along the way, what happened is the people who program this music forgot about rock and roll music, and everything is all these pretty little kids with wearing no clothes and stupid dance moves.
Yeah, and their voices are all computerized.
It's a big difference.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I don't blame people for using the advantages that they have that we didn't have earlier on. Good for them, and if they can make money doing it and have a career, good for them too. All I'm saying is there's still plenty of room left for bands that actually play their own instruments and that rock.
Yes, agree 100%. But before you got, you really got into that, it was mostly sports for you. So you were.
Well, yeah. I mean, when I was a little kid, I mean, that's really all there was. There was nothing pointing you at looking at music or listening to music until when I discovered on my own, very accidentally, I discovered the Beatles as a charting brand new band in the 60s and 62, I guess, 63. But the Beatles didn't get on Ed Sullivan until 64. And that's when life started to change for me. I mean, I was still very much into playing sports and knowing these sports people, a lot of the famous guys that were playing in Chicago at the time we got to meet and become friendly with and all that. And I actually look forward to a career in sports as a player. Yeah. As a player at one point.
I wanted to ask you about that.
There were no such things as agents for sports people.
Okay.
And see, back then that didn't exist. There's always been an agent, booking agents for bands and musicians, but there were never, I mean, that was a brand new thing, which really surprises me when you think about it.
Yeah.
But they weren't making the kind of money that
true.
The players are making now.
That's true.
You remember back then in the 60s, if somebody made $50,000, it was a king's ransom.
Yeah, because in the off season, they all had part-time jobs working at car dealerships and things like that.
Yep. So, it was just a completely different time. So, the whole thing about my interest in sports is just like anybody else's at that time. And then music came along, and it happened to be at the beginning of pop music, of popular music. With the Beatles came out, and it just changed the whole temperature of the whole music scene for everybody all over the world. It wasn't just England or America; it was everywhere, and the whole thing shifted. The entire cultural base and foundation of kids was changed forever, and it never looked back. Kids were now responsible and had the ability to make up their own mind of what they liked musically. Whereas before, it wasn't even a question. Nobody cared.
Yeah, and in that time, kids were actually, with the baby boom, they were actually able to get out and get jobs and were actually an economic force in their own right for the first time in history.
Yeah, I mean, there was, I mean, as a kid, you were never, in the 60s, you were really never given an opinion. You didn't have an opinion the way kids have opinions now.
Right.
Kids are so much smarter, I think, now than they were then in terms of the information that's available to them is night and day. What we were able to, get. I mean, if we had to find something out, we went to an encyclopedia.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
We didn't go to Google and say, what's the answer to this question?
Yeah.
Which I really would have liked, by the way. I'm not saying anything.
Oh, right. Yeah.
We would have all loved to have had Google for those big school projects, wouldn't we?
Oh, God, yeah.
Think of those things we used to have to do. Oh, my God.
Go to the library. Find your own encyclopedia.
Most kids say I've never seen the inside of a library.
I know. It's a shame.
And I'm not saying it's my favorite place on earth either, but I'm just saying.
No. All right, so you mentioned that you thought about a career in sports. What was your sport?
Well, I was too little to be a football player, but I loved to throw. I had a great arm. So I was a catcher, and I liked being a catcher because nobody wanted to play catcher because it was a hard job. Yep. It was very dangerous, and you had to be of a certain grit. to play that position.
Oh yeah.
And this, back in the day, you could get run over by a guy much bigger than you. I'm not that big of a guy, but I'm big enough to be a catcher. And I enjoyed catching. It meant to me that I was going to be in every play of every game.
Yeah, that's so true.
And back then, when you're playing in the peanut leagues or little leagues or pony leagues, those managers are obligated to play all the players. You're not to leave people on the bench, and sooner or later you're supposed to get in every game. And nobody wanted my position.
That's true.
And that's what I liked about it, because I would play all the time. So unfortunately, much later in my life, I would blame it as the culprit for damaging my legs. I've had two knee replacements and 5 other surgeries between the two.
Oh, wow.
Yep. So man, you don't have to make it in the bigs
to get
in order to get hurt.
Man,
it really was awful. It was awful. But then along the way, I had my older brother around me, and he was influencing me with the music. He was only 4 years older, but the difference between an 11-year-old and a 15-year-old, again, is night and day.
Oh yeah.
So I was learning from the best, my brother, about all this stuff that was going on, girls and drums and music.
All the important stuff.
So he could, and my parents would let me go with him to the ball game. So I had an escort and, babysitter, somebody to look after me when I was a little guy.
Right.
Because I'm not supposed to be going into the inner city by myself, which I immediately started doing when he wouldn't go or couldn't go. I was a quick study. I figured out how to use the bus system. And, but then as I got older and as I just kind of drifted away from the playing aspect. I mean, I played up until I was 15. So I got into high school, and I was on the high school baseball team, but I didn't. Freshman year, I didn't make the A squad,
right, yeah.
No, I didn't make the A squad, but I was really into it. And somewhere after that first year, I just lost interest in playing, and all this music stuff was happening. It was 1968, 69. All the music was coming out, and I was getting older, and I'm turning 14, 15 years old. So, I'm discovering girls and having fun with my friends, and certain friends of mine had cars, and we could have our independence and freedom and go out and do stuff. So, that became more important to me. And then I started going to concerts, and music had always been a big deal to me ever since I heard that first Beatles record and realized that nobody else had heard that record but me in the whole city of Chicago, it felt like.
Yeah.
And then the next week, the song Please Please Me went off the charts, and we didn't hear anything about the Beatles again, other than what you heard about in the papers. And prior to the Ed Sullivan appearance, there was a lot of coverage on them and the fabulous scenes at various airports, like when they came home to London or Liverpool when they flew back in. I remember, people hanging all over the airport just to get a glimpse of them. And the buildup on them was just as natural and organic and as beautiful as a promotion could roll out. But those guys, they spent years playing five sets a night, all night long, 6 sets a night. And people don't realize it. They feel like the Beatles just kind of came out of nowhere, but they did all the work that you had to do.
Yeah, those Cavern Club years were brutal.
Yep.
Do you remember the first concert you saw?
I remember seeing a guy in a shopping center. He was a singer who never achieved huge status, but it was a guy named Ral Donner. And he was a singer like a Bobby Vinton kind of a guy.
Ah, okay.
Way back in the 60s. My mom took us to see him down the street at some shopping center that was opening or whatever. And I enjoyed the whole whole aspect of it, the lights, the stage, the dark, the singing, everything. I mean, it was much more primitive than what we're doing right now as far as concerts go. But it gave me a look at it, and I don't remember saying, "Oh, I want to do this." But as time went on, and I got older, and you started seeing more and more of these bands on Ed Sullivan, and then they had, the American Bandstand and Lloyd Thaxton, and there was a number of these other TV shows specials that would come on. Sonny and Cher, they featured popular bands, and as time went on and music got more and more popular, we started seeing more and more bands performing on TV, and they looked funny and they looked weird, and, they were cool, and they wore the coolest clothes, and they pissed off our parents, which, was the best part.
That was important.
And depending on how badly they could piss off your parents would determine how much you might put them in the front of the list of who you want to listen to even more, because it's going to piss your parents off. I think there was a few records I got broken for that very reason.
Oh, I got an Alvin and the Chipmunks record broken when I was a kid, but that was just for...
Well, that one goes without saying. You got to break that one.
So did you ever get the music bug for playing music and starting bands?
Yeah, I sang in a band. And I also shared drum duties. My brother had a beautiful set of silver sparkle Ludwigs that he bought in the mid-'60s. Then he had to go on a motorcycle trip when he was about, I don't know, maybe 18 or 20. Him and a few guys went from Illinois to California and back, did the long trip. And he needed me to buy into his drum set so he could have some more money to spend. So I bought into half of the drum set, and I also had learned how to play. I could still play pretty good, but nothing like, one of these guys in the band, the way the bands play. I mean, but I'm way more than adequate. I mean, I'd give me a 6 or 7.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but I do like to play.
So no matter what you're doing, you're always like the rock solid part of whatever you're doing. The catcher and the drummer. You're always kind of...
That's funny. I guess you're right, yeah.
You're always kind of in charge there because, the catcher's calling the game, the drummer's holding down the beat. So you're always kind of... You may be behind the scenes, but always kind of in charge and got your hands in everything.
The last thing I really did with sports was the end of the 90s and the early 2000s. Randy Johnson was pitching for the Mariners.
Yes.
And one of the band managers introduced me to him and said he's a huge music fan. And when he's at home, in the off season, he lives in Phoenix. You should have him come out to your shows. He'd like to come out to shows. I said, great. So I think the first one we came to was Deep Purple, and he shot a bunch of pictures. He liked to take pictures.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
And then his wife called me one day after she'd known that we'd gotten together a couple times, and she calls me up out of nowhere and says, listen, between Christmas and spring training, Randy likes to loosen up and play catch. But the problem with Randy is he doesn't know how to just play catch. He throws really hard all the time. And he's breaking my hand. He's going to kill me.
Oh, my gosh.
Because he makes me play catch with him, but he doesn't know how to, to him, like he throws at 70 or 80 miles an hour, which is nothing for him. But for me, it's coming in blinding fast. So she goes, would you mind coming over and playing catch with him?
Oh, my gosh.
And I said, well, sure, that'll be fine. So
sure,
nearly every morning, and I want to say I started in 98, but it was before he was on the Diamondbacks. I don't think he came to the Diamondbacks till 99.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure, because they won the World Series in 01. Yeah, so I think he was 99. Anyway.
Okay.
So for all those years between Christmas and spring training in February when they started, I would go over to his house after I dropped my daughter off at school at 8 o'clock. And it's cold here at 8 o'clock in the morning in December and January, let me tell you.
Oh, really?
And yeah, I mean, it's in the 40s a lot.
Oh, that's cold, man.
That's awful for playing catch.
Oh, God, yeah.
But that's when he would do it. I had to go right by his house every day to drop my daughter off. So that's how I did it. And So we go in front of his house and play catch like a couple of kids. and you know, and then one of us would have to yell out to the other one, "Car coming."
Oh no.
I swear to God, I'm not kidding. I mean, it was that squirrely.
Game on.
And yeah.
Game
And
off.
most of the time he would hit my mitt. All I had to do is stick it out there and boom, it'd be exploding in my glove. And it's on a street with a bunch of nice houses, but they're pretty far apart. But what happened was, especially in the morning when there's not that much noise, every time he hit my glove, the glove would explode, right?
Right.
Make a great big sound like an M80 was going off in my hand.
Yes, I love that sound.
I love that.
Yes.
And then after we were done playing catch, I'd always go down the street because I'd always inevitably miss like, I don't know, a half a dozen balls anyway.
Right.
I ended up with I had like 100 balls at one point. I ended up giving them all away to kids, but
oh wow.
I ended up with all of his baseballs because once they went over my head, I said, "You want me to go get those?" He goes, "Nah, don't bother." and I mean, there'd be balls all over the street, you know.
Oh man.
Yeah, so we did that until 03. I tried it one more time in 04. But in between there, in 03, I got cancer.
Wow.
And then in February or January, when it was time to start playing catch again, I tried it one time, and I was in the middle of chemo, and I just lost all my arm strength then, and
sure.
It was really a shame because I loved playing catch with him. And then the other thing that I found out years later was I tore my rotator cuff on my right arm, and I never knew it until last year. I went in to get some x-rays on something else. He said, "You know that you tore your rotator cuff?" They go, "Well, it looks like it's healed over."
Wow.
I said, so I said, "You mean that was like something that if you would have known some years ago, you would have insisted on operating on?" And they said, "Yeah." I said, but it healed by itself. I hear that's one of the worst operations you can do.
Oh my God.
So anyway,
wow.
yeah, so I had to stop doing it then. And that was prior to me having either of my knees done.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I'm okay now, but
that's good.
Stuff happens as you get older.
Yeah, that's
just
true.
The way it is. Just the way it is.
So, did you start in the promotion business before you moved from Chicago to Arizona, or did you start that with some of the sports guys that you were friends with?
Oh no, I had nothing to do. The sports guys had nothing to do with the music. I had Kirk Gibson. I asked him if he would write the intro to the book, the foreword.
Yes.
And that was because in 2007, I had the Who playing downtown at the Suns Arena, and Bob Melvin brought Kirk Gibson to the show, and we hit it off immediately and got to be buddies. And then he ended up living in my house, where my office is now. Wow. Because I'd used that house for 10 years for storage for all of my memorabilia. I've got like tons of stuff. Man. And so I was using that for storage, but now it's my office. For the last 10 years, I've used this house as an office. So the first year that I went back on my own after leaving Live Nation, Gibby was named to be the manager of the Arizona Diamondbacks. And he called me up one day and he goes, "Hey, I need a place to stay. I'm like living downtown in this hotel, but we're going to start spring training in Scottsdale. I was thinking it would be really cool if you let me stay in your house." The other house, he goes, I'll pay your rent and everything. I know you like to keep that room for guests when they come, but I could really use it for a while. So he ended up staying about 6 months. And he started managing the Diamondbacks. He was manager of the year that year.
Wow. In
2011. And the other fun thing was when he was standing there, he goes, "Hey, Alan Trammell needs a place to stay too. Can he come stay with me?"
Oh my God.
So I had the two best Tigers there.
Yes. Oh, I used to love Alan Trammell. I wasn't a Tigers fan growing up, but I loved Alan Trammell.
Great player. Great guy.
Yeah. He was him and Lou Whitaker, I just thought were just an amazing combo.
Right?
So,
and they still haven't put Lou or Gibby in the Hall, which I think is a mistake.
oh, for sure.
Both those guys are two of the best ball players if you ever got to see them play.
Oh, absolutely.
And all they do is they look at their stats. I mean, there's tons of players in there with stats not as good or were they as important to their team as those guys.
Exactly. Those guys were the rocks.
I'm still furious about Roger Maris not being in.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, everybody I say that to goes, he's not in.
Exactly. But,
you know, I mean, everybody assumes he's in. He has the biggest record in sports.
yeah.
And the way that they humiliated Barry Bonds and McGuire and Sosa, I mean, it's all the more reason to put him in for standing for something, you know?
Exactly. I agree with you 100%. It's a damn shame that he's not in.
It really sucks. And he should have been in years before, but,
yeah.
You know, he was a country boy, a hick that had no idea of how to handle those sports writers in the big city. And they didn't like him for it. And that's the only reason he's not in.
Yeah.
I mean, if Louis Aparicio and Nellie Fox were both amazing ball players, if they're in the Hall of Fame, so is Roger Maris. That's all I got to say.
I agree.
And there's so many others like that, you know, that are really great players, but they weren't as magnificent.
Right. They kept a little lower profile or like you're saying, ticked off the wrong people. So how did you get started promoting concerts? I don't imagine, I never, went to my guidance counselor in high school and got that as a possible career. So how did you get into it?
Well, guess what? I did talk to a counselor about it because they started to bring, when I was a junior in high school, and I completely blew it. I didn't go to the show, but they had Stevie Wonder and the James Gang open for them.
Oh my God.
Right? This is in 1970 or 71.
Wow.
And it was like $4 or $5, and I didn't go.
Oh.
It was so stupid that I didn't go. And I heard it was a great show, and it's stiff. So the high school never did another concert that I was aware of because it just didn't do well. I mean,
wow.
They managed not to captivate everybody's attention. I don't know how they failed. I mean, they didn't get me.
Yeah.
And I was a hugest music fan of everybody. But we were going to a lot of other concerts in the city. In 71 was my first really great big year of seeing a lot of shows.
Okay.
Prior to that, one of my favorite first shows was Leon Russell.
Oh, nice.
I absolutely adored him. And I saw a couple of his shows very early on. And then Emerson, Lake and Palmer and Humble Pie and King Crimson. And,
I love Crimson.
We had a teenage pizza bar down the street from us, and they had bands in there like REO and Styx and Chicago played there. A bunch of great Chicago local bands that never got out of Chicago.
Yeah.
But we had a lot of music around us then, and I loved the shows. I just loved these concerts and dance things, and there was little sock hops they'd have, and then they don't call them sock hops anymore, but they used to. They had those in the church basement, and bands would come in there and play cover songs, and we enjoyed those. And there was plenty of stuff urging us on to become part of the music scene. I'd say the downtown concerts were really the ones, and seeing those bands and their expertise and how incredible they played, and with the lights and the sounds. And then of course in the late 60s, early 70s, God knows what we were taking to go to the shows with us. I mean, bad dogs that we were. We had our little rituals of preparing ourselves to see those concerts. I mean, shit, because when you're at home or you're at somebody's house, I mean, everybody was always smoking something before they listened to some music or taking something.
Right.
And that's just what was going on at the time. That was all very new at that time. And I think there's, that's all been beaten to death so much. I mean, the bands and the audiences are nowhere as reckless and as crazy as they once were. I'm sure quite a few of them still are, but it's nothing like it used to be.
No, I'm sure.
people trying to blow themselves up all the time.
Yeah.
They realize that they are human. You better watch yourself.
Right.
There, so.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors.
But that was the kind of stuff, and I remember there was a guy called Howard Stein, who was a promoter out of New York, and he had a place there called the Academy of Music that he booked. I've never been to that place, so I don't know what it was like. And Bill Graham was around doing the Fillmore East and West, so I was familiar with some of the characters that were doing this. Dick Clark was also a concert promoter. He did the Beatles when they played L.A.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so I was aware of that term and that they were the guys that arranged these things. And, it wasn't like, there's no school you can apply to. There's nothing you can do about that. But, it was always on my mind. And I don't know, one thing led to another. And I started, I'll tell you what, in 73, I wrote about it in the book. I got invited to work at this Led Zeppelin show.
I wanted to ask about this. Yes.
And after the show, I started out lining trash cans with garbage can liners.
Right.
And that was my job at 4 or 5 in the morning when I arrived and reported for work. I had no idea what I was going to do, and I really didn't think I was going to be lining trash cans. But why should I be doing it? Not qualified to do anything,
right? Really,
other than I could have been a great assistant or a great runner, that kind of stuff. So I was there to do whatever it is that they wanted me to do. And later on in the day, they had me playing music through their track tape decks that Showco had on the soundboard. Wow. And because they Jimmy Page took a very, very long time finding his way from LA to San Francisco that day. Everybody else was there, the band, everybody was there. And Jimmy decided he's going to take a regular plane and be one of the people.
Right.
and fly to San Francisco like a normal person's charter jet.
Wow.
So I had to play music to keep people pacified while the set change was taking place, and it took hours.
Wow.
And so I had 12 8 tracks to play for 2 hours.
Oh my God.
So that wasn't very easy, but I managed to avoid playing too many of the same songs more than once. After the show was over, one of the guys that worked for Bill Graham, Arnie Kostelnik, I don't know how it came up, but I overheard him saying, "We're going to go to LA after the show." I said, "How are you going to do that?" And he said, "Oh, there's an airmail flight that leaves at midnight, and it goes both ways. It goes from LA to San Francisco to LA, and it's $10. And it's this little U.S. airmail plane. I don't remember what airlines it was. I don't even know if it was an airline. It could have been the U.S. Postal Service for all I know.
Right. Yeah.
And it was very well known as something that was available to people in L.A. or San Francisco. It was an airmail flight, and you paid extra when you bought postage with airmail on it.
Right.
You remember airmail stamps.
Yep.
So I'm on the plane with this guy, Arnie, who says, come with, it's only $10. Well, I'd just been paid, and I made $50 for my entire day of work from 5 o'clock till, I think that show was probably over around 7 p.m.
Oh.
It was a daytime show, which I loved. And I was out of there before it was dark, and I ended up going to the airport with these guys from the show. It was a very cool thing. I was like one of the gang. I'm 18 years old, and I had a little bit of money, so I had some money for some food. And I get to the gate, and of course it's closed, and it's not going to open till 6 a.m. So I slept in the airport, and at 6 a.m. I go up to the counter, and because of my $10 plane ride and whatever I had to eat, which probably cost me $4 or $6. I ended up being $3 short on the ride back to Phoenix
for
the plane. And I begged the guy behind the counter. I said, dude, it's $3.
Yeah.
It literally was $3.
Wow.
And he couldn't believe that I would be so unprepared and come to the airport without enough money. I said, it's not like I could talk to anybody in the middle of the night. I didn't know I was coming here at 1 a.m.
Right.
And I mean, and I said the fare's it was like $30 or $29 to fly from Phoenix or LA to Phoenix. So I had to hitchhike down to San Diego to get the difference in the money for my friend and his mother.
Oh my God.
Who royally bitched me out for being so unprepared and how dangerous it is to do this. And, I should just let you rot. And I said, all right, let me rot. She goes, well, I can't do that. I mean, mother's got to stick together. She called my mother up. I said, I don't live with her anymore. She goes, all the more reason. Maybe you should. Maybe you moved out too early.
Oh, no.
I heard it all. But you asked, how did I become a concert promoter? And this is how.
Wow.
So I'm on the plane coming to LA with this guy, and he starts informing me that these agents, these bands all have agents. And I didn't know that. I didn't know they had booking agents. I'm 17, but I'm not been in this business yet.
Yeah.
And so he was the one that told me about the agents. And I'm sitting there taking notes as fast as I can. And he's telling me, this agent books this, and this. This is the name of the agency. This is the name of the agent.
Wow.
And and I can do that now myself, with just about I can tell you just about any band and what agency or who books them. So this is what he did for me. And it was a great favor that he did, because after I got home, I started reaching out and contacting these people. And, the biggest question was always, well, who else have you done? Or where do you do your shows? And when you come back and say, well, this would be my first show, or I don't do shows anywhere, or whatever, I mean, they're going, well, I'll tell you what, why don't you get some experience and call us back? And I'm going, well, how am I supposed to get experience if nobody will give me any bands to book?
Yeah, exactly.
So what you end up doing then is you end up promoting whatever it is that you can get, and hope that it pans out,
Right.
Because what happens is the only bands that are available for somebody who doesn't do this are bands that are either possible losers or people who a lot of people just don't know who they are yet, new bands or old bands that are already tired and over the hill. And unless you're in that game of knowing all that stuff about all those bands, you can really get hurt, financially. You can make a big mistake. I mean, back in those days, when you had tickets of $4, $5, $6, the bands were making $2,500, $3,500, $5,000, maybe $10,000.
Okay.
Big groups. I mean,
wow.
like groups like Bob Seger in 1980, they were making maybe 25, 30 grand.
Oh, wow.
And if they're touring now, they're making $500,000
Jeez.
or more, guaranteed. And because the ticket prices are so much higher, and everything is so much higher. All the costs are higher, everything is. But back then, there was a real conscience about ticket prices, and we didn't have scalpers driving those prices up, which is why people always ask, why are tickets so expensive? Because the best seats in the house, you can't ever charge enough, because scalpers always get their hands on them, and they raise them 10 times what they're supposed to be.
Yep.
And the bands are going, well, why don't we make that money? Why are we letting them make that money? They don't want to charge that much, but if somebody's going to do it, it might as well be them, right?
Yeah.
So, so all of this is going on back then. And I did get my shows in. I got the Mahavishnu Orchestra. I got Herbie Hancock and Charles Boyd. And I got Brian Auger. I did a Dave Brubeck. I did some really cool shows. But I couldn't get what was cool and happening just yet until I did a few of those shows. And then I ran out of money. I mean, it's hard to do shows without a nice bankroll behind you. I didn't have a bankroll behind me, and I didn't have any steady income. And so, I mean, I was taking part-time jobs, cleaning buildings, selling water beds.
Oh, wow.
The bottom line is, in order to become a promoter, A, yes, you need some money, but B, you have to have the tenacity to never accept no. You have to constantly keep getting up from rejection, and and not take it personal. And it's very difficult to not take things personally when people seem to be holding you back, but the fact is they don't know you. They're not holding anything back. They're looking out for their own selves.
Exactly.
And when and they just want to know, and they sell you a show that you're not going to screw it up.
Right.
And you're going to pay, and you're going to do your job and pay your bills. So after you do a few shows and you get around, that's how you get to be a promoter. And then you start finding yourself buying this show and that show and this other show, and you take on shows that nobody else wants. And now you can have a case in saying to that same agent, all right, I booked your crummy act. Right. Now give me your great act.
Yeah.
And then what would come up back then, not as much now, but it used to come up all the time. They'd say, well, the band's loyal to the promoter that they used the last 3 times they played there. And that's something. And they said, believe us, when you start promoting shows, and you will, you're going to be good, you're going to be fine, but you're going to start promoting shows, and once every tour, somebody else may challenge you, and they might try to steal what you consider is your act because you did them last time and the time before, or you took the first chance on them and broke them. Right. And people came out and they liked you, and now all of a sudden somebody's offering more money now that you did all the heavy lifting, and we have to bring those offers to the acts. Some acts say, well, screw you. Where were you when I was brand new and Danny was there? Right. And other ones go, hey, Danny, why won't you pay me more money? Yeah. And it turns into that thing. So that's how you end up losing shows, is because some other person comes butting in on your territory and offers more money after, you've helped them to become as big as they are.
Wow.
So there's a lot of things there that, like any gig, those subtle nuances that end up coming up sooner or later in any position that you're in.
Yeah.
And but that's how you become a promoter, though, is you do a lot of shows and you do them well, and you get good reviews from your shows and your efforts from people back to their agents and the managers. And they say, yeah, this is a good one. You work with him, trust him, you'll have a good time, whatever. And that's how you get to do shows.
And so part of that is working with the logistics, like getting everything for backstage, getting everything, working with their sometimes weird riders, and there's interesting clauses.
Everything.
Are you working during the concert, or do you ever get a chance to just sit back and watch any of the shows that you promote, or are you constantly working during them?
I try to watch every show that I do. I'll see some of every show that I do if I'm there, but you can't. Yeah, but I typically, it depends on the show. I mean, if you've got a big show in an arena, there's an accountant there representing me, and advertising people, and a production manager that deals with the band's production people to make sure they're all talking the same language. Okay. They don't want me talking. They don't want me in the middle of technical stuff, because that's just not what I do. I put together the show with the agent and the band and everything, and the band brings their show in and book it. But there's depending on the size of the show, there's anywhere from 2 or 3 people on the road with each band to 100. Depends on the band and where they're playing.
And so you've got your own team to deal with their team.
Correct.
Okay. So that, I guess that would give you the freedom to actually watch and enjoy the show that you help bring to your city.
Well, I mean, typically my job is mostly over by the time the show comes to town. It's like, I'm always looking forward to 11 o'clock, because that means the show's over.
Right.
It doesn't mean I'm sick of anybody. It just means I want the show to be over. So I fulfill all my obligations, my responsibilities to the audience and to the band and the building and my staff, and we all work together to finish up a show and go home and sleep in our own beds and get after it again the next day.
When did the idea to write your book, All Excess, happen? What caused you to decide, I want to write a book about my career?
Well, there's a lot of stories in there that I've told many times over the years, and there's a lot of other stories that are newer that came along later. But the fact is, not to be a name dropper, people love reading about their favorite stars.
Very true.
And people like knowing about what do they like, or just certain incidents that they're not aware of. How did this happen? Wasn't that cool? And after you tell those stories for a while, it's like it just makes sense to maybe write them down and put them into a certain order so that it makes it fun for somebody to read it. And then you got to find the pictures and other things that'll make people chuckle or fill in the storyline and so forth. And that's what I did with this book. And that, like, one of the things that took me forever, otherwise it would have maybe been out a year earlier, was what pictures do you use and how many of them, and where do you stick them? It's like most books have a photo section or two, and then the rest of it is all writing. Yeah. And I didn't want to do that. I like the idea of having the pictures right there on the page so you could look at who it was I'm talking about or writing about, and you can see exactly what they look like or what I was looking at when I was, in the midst of this story. And I think it really helps tell the story much better than if you have a photo section 60 or 80 pages into the book and you got to turn it back to see who you're talking about.
Exactly.
So I never liked that part of the book process, but the reason they do that is because it costs much less for the book guy who's putting the book together. It costs you, the person who's publishing or paying for the book to be printed. The paper's cheaper that you type the words on, and the paper's more expensive that you put pictures on. So that's why they put those together like that instead of a page here, a page there. It just adds to the cost of actually making the book into a finished product. So I ignored everything that I was told. and I finally figured out that all I had to do was get the stories written and then add the pictures to them. And then you put the thing in the order that you want. So I had a working order for a while, but I still hadn't pulled the trigger on the pictures. And finally, when I finally did that, then they could actually lay the book out and be done with it. And that took a good month or so last year. And, and then somebody says, well, why don't you, give me 6 months and I'll see if I can find a publisher for you. And it's like, I was going, I'm so sick of this thing. I want to get it. Let me get my story out now. Right. And as it was, I didn't end up with a distributor or a publisher or anything like that. We did it all of ourselves. So the book is great. Excellent. And I'm very proud and happy of all the effort that everybody put into it. But I really do wish I had that distributor or publisher, because there's a lot of stuff about putting out a book I just don't know about. We're getting around that. I'm getting my interviews, and I've done a lot of things to promote it, and it's okay. I mean, we're getting it out there slowly but surely, but in today's world, everybody wants everything yesterday. Everything brand new has got to be brand new. And these days, they beat the hell out of things for a day or two, and then it's old news, and they're on to something else. So, you just do your best, and hopefully it's enough.
Well, I love how you formatted it with the pictures, and each story is its own chapter. So you've got like about 60 chapters, and they're all shorter stories. It's not bogging down people, readers with minutia and all. And like you said, having to flip back and forth to find a picture that correlates to that story. And I think that's makes it a really easy, really nice read.
Yeah, it came out great that way. There were certain things or certain people I wanted to talk about that didn't require a long chapter. Or as they say, also, a picture tells 1,000 words. So while the picture's telling 1,000 words, I had the best time I had writing that book and putting it together was once I found the picture and realized that picture had to be in there, was writing the captions underneath. Yeah. And there's some really good ones.
There are.
if I do say so myself. There's some really funny stuff there. And with that picture, if you're familiar with that person or that band or whatever it is, my caption in that picture can tell you a whole story. And I like that about it, because everybody these days is such a quick study and a quick reader. I mean, you're going through your social media and it's like boom, 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 boom.
Yep.
You know, you could cover 10 subjects or ideas in a minute, and people do that. I mean, very rarely are you going to get people to stop, click, and read and absorb. So
for sure,
you gotta get that stuff in there as quickly as possible, because people just have, you know, all the social media and the phones and everything else, emails, all this is all done. While it makes certain things way more convenient for us, it just makes it that much more possible for us to be busier and doing more stuff.
Yep.
And as opposed to sitting back and laying back and reading something or going to a concert. And, you know, we have been able to go to concerts for over a year now, the way that we're used to. I imagine that'll be returning sooner than later, I think, at this point. I think so. You know, I imagine, I'm thinking around Labor Day. Maybe, you know, some things are already, I understand, in various parts of the country are already starting to happen. Yeah. In various places. But, you know, we'll see about that. I mean, we've been close to feeling like we've had this thing snuffed out a couple times. And every time we get close to that, you know, somebody's got to open up something prematurely, and boom, we're back where we started. So, I mean, I get it. I know everybody is as uptight as can be and impatient and ready to get back after everything. And, right. You know, I'm one of them. I had a show scheduled the night of March the 15th last year. And at 6 o'clock, the governor told everybody here to shut everything down. At 6 in the evening for a 7 o'clock show, we had to send everybody home. Oh God, that's devastating. Yep. I'll tell you, despite that, what I like about the stories and all that you're saying, you know, even though that's a horrible story, but the stories in the book aren't mean-spirited or anything. They're just good, fun stories. And I think that's one of my favorite parts about the book, because you're not dishing any dirt or telling, you know, secrets that aren't supposed to be let out. It's just good stories. So I have a couple questions about some of the stories, and we don't have to go into great detail. It's just a few, but the first thing I want to know is what's going on in the cover picture. What's going on with the cover picture? Yeah. What is going on in there? You've got this big wad of cash. What is going on? What happened there was I had just put on Pink Floyd at the Municipal Stadium, and they played 2 nights, and in the local stadium, you know, it's a minor league ballpark. Oh, yeah, yeah. So they only have grandstands, you know, that surround the field, but there's no bleachers. And so here's Pink Floyd coming in there, and I need to have 25,000 capacity. So the head of security says to me, I don't know, a couple weeks before the show, he goes, give me 10 grand in cash. I said, what for? He goes, I'm going to go buy all the parking lots around the stadium, because they only have parking for 8,500 people, which comes out to about, I think it's 2.3 people per car is how they go to shows. Oh, wow. So I needed more parking spots. You know, I needed 10,000 parking spots, not 2,000 or 2,500. Right, yeah. So we rented all the parking lots, and they brought the money over to my house after the show. That's where that was taken. and as you can see, I was very happy. Yeah, that's a very happy Danny. So I made more on the parking than I did on the show. That's amazing. Oh my God. It's true. I also read that, all right, so you had a hand in naming Lollapalooza with Perry Farrell? Uh-huh. How did that happen? We were just up late one night, you know, getting loaded, having fun. And he was telling me about this dream he had about this show that was going to be bigger than any concert and cooler. You know, he goes, you know, they should be able to buy stuff that appeals to them. Concerts should be more than buying a crummy hot dog and a Coke or a beer. Yeah. and he just had this image because he loved going to shows himself. He wanted to help create something bigger and better than anything else. But instead of having it in a stadium, he was wanting to utilize the amphitheaters that are around town. And at the time when he was in Jane's Addiction, late 80s, early 90s, when this was all going on, that form of music, which his is somewhere between, I don't know, progressive and punk and hard rock and everything else. I mean, they covered a lot of bases. It was like, but they weren't a metal act, but they were a hard rock act. And he just wanted to transform the experience for these new forward thinking people that were going to his concerts. He wanted to give them something mind blowing and bigger and better than anything else. And he just couldn't come up with a great name for it. I remember he wanted to call it some kind of a big jamboree or something like that. And I said, Perry, it sounds like a Boy Scout troop.
Right.
I know you want to do something. And he wanted to do some kind of tongue in cheek, kind of old school, old fashioned, that would summarize the feeling, like, kind of like a picnic, but you don't want to call it a picnic.
Right. Yeah.
You got to come up with something cool. And it just kind of came out like, and I don't know which one of us said it, but it was in the midst of a several hour jam session on this topic we kept coming back to. And it just kind of like, we want to have a Lollapalooza of the time. Huh? That's a good one. Something like that. And I think we said at one point we're going to stay up until we name this thing tonight. So it was in our best interest to figure out a name sooner than later.
Right. Well, I went to a bunch of those, so thank you, because those were amazing shows.
Yeah.
Now, the other instance that I had a question about, because I don't think I could have done this, was the time that Whitney Houston asked you to get Mike Tyson off the stage in Vegas.
Uh-huh.
I don't think I could have done that. I think I said, no thanks. I'll take a loss on this one.
No, I wouldn't have had a show.
I know, but Mike Tyson's kind of he's.
No, there's no buts.
Okay, well, see, that's why you do this and I don't.
I'm just telling you, it's like when some stuff like that happens. It's not all the time. It's very rare that something like that happens. I mean, I can't remember any other. I'd have to really think about it. But there's things that happen that make people crazy, and it becomes your problem. It's not your fault, but it becomes your problem, like this. And in my case, all I had to do was go down there and get past his 2 mountains of beef that were in front of him, and talk to him about the problem. And when I explained to him how she felt about it and why she was so upset, he said, I understand. And I said, but I got to get you off the stage right now, because she wants to go, and come on with me. Will you? Let me take you down the stairs. So I kind of very gently touched him by the arm and kind of led him down the stairway. And as soon as we got to the bottom of the stairs on the floor, the lights went off. There's Whitney standing not that far away from us, over us, with the lights on, looking at me. And she did this fantastic, fantastic show.
Wow. And
afterwards, she called me back to her dressing room again. I walked in the room, the door closed behind me, and I'm looking at her. She goes, my hero. And then and he goes, and I hear behind me, you're a dead man. And it was him. He's in the dressing room after the show, and he was laughing. They were all laughing. Let's scare the shit out of him.
Oh, man. I think that's my favorite.
Kind of did.
Yeah. Yeah. I know there's got to be other stories that got left on the cutting room floor. Is there another book in the making, or?
Oh, I don't know that I'd ever do this again. I mean, there are so many things that have taken place and transpired in all those thousands of shows and all those thousands of days. Think about it. Since I started doing this, like 15,000 days have passed.
Wow.
And there's been shows on a lot of those days. So, I mean, I could spend the rest of my life writing, but I'm not going to. I mean, it's like I think I shared a great deal here, a lot more than a lot of people have. If I was moved to, I mean, of course I would do it. But I'm still working this one. I mean, it took me so long to get it together and get it out that I'm anxious to make sure that anybody who's a good, music fan or a concert fan, I'm really anxious for them to get a copy of this. It's a fairly pricey book. It goes for $50.
Right.
When you consider this is double the size of most books, and it has 5 to 10 times more photos in it, and how much more it cost me just to print it. It's ridiculous. You don't want to know. But, I decided this is going to be for people who are true music fans, people who buy records, people who buy concert tickets, people that live in Phoenix, people that live in Chicago, people that live in Philly, people live in Boston, people live in Virginia and Timbuktu and everywhere. The point is for me that my life has been like I've had a starring role in my own life, which is really fun. It's been such a blast, and like you said, I didn't want this book to be about griping about who did what to me or what bad things happened. I mean, this wasn't about exacting revenge from anybody.
Right.
This is purely about, knowing and being aware of how fantastic some of these names are that are in here and that I've been able to have stories with in life and fun and things and exchanges. And I don't know, it's been a gas, and I'm looking forward to this whole nonsense that we've been going through this last year. I mean,
yeah,
and I call it nonsense not because I'm making light of it, but the fact that it's still here and it's still causing the troubles that it is indicates to me that nobody took care of it when they should have. And I mean, we've never had anything like this in our lifetime before, and I sincerely hope we never have anything like it again.
Oh, me too.
This is just so terrible. The things, that have taken place. I lost John Prine,
right?
Which was like the worst.
You guys were really good friends.
Oh, best friends. I did more shows with him than anybody in my whole life.
Wow.
And we spent more time, with each other outside of concerts as well. So losing him was like losing a family member without question.
I am so sorry.
Yeah. And it happened right at the beginning of this. I mean, it happened right when all this started, 3 weeks. It was That's 3 weeks after. It was 3 weeks after that concert I had was canceled.
I remember it was early on in the whole thing.
Yeah.
Shark Tank has a role in this
Shark
too.
Tank, yes. I was going to be smooth and remember, but I was watching. Now this goes back to 2016, and Bill Walton was on Shark Tank on an episode, and I'm friends with Bill Walton. I've known him through the Grateful Dead for many years.
Right.
And he's been to most of my Dead shows, and whether it's in Vegas or in Phoenix, he comes because it's so close to his home in San Diego. So he was on the show one night, so I watched it, and it was funny. He was great. And then the next guy that was on was a ghostwriter.
Okay.
And he came on and he talked about how he could help you write your book. And when he was done with you, you would have 100 copies of your own book. And he would help you write it and put it together and take you through all those mysteries of book writing, because most normal lay people do not know how to put out a book. And I'm one of them.
Right.
So I got him on the phone the next day, which is the thing about Shark Tank that's so amazing is like, you can, whatever the product is, whatever the name of it is, whatever it is, you can find them the next day. I mean, that's ridiculous because in my mind, you got to do research to track people down.
Yeah.
And You don't have to do that anymore. You can just type it somewhere and it comes up. I mean, boom.
It's unbelievable.
When was the last time you called information on the phone?
I couldn't even tell you.
So I called him up and we made a deal, and he started interviewing me over the phone, and then he started, then he'd have the stuff printed, typed out, and then we started editing. So I had a great deal of this book written in 2016 and 2017.
Oh, wow.
But then, like I said, he sold his company, and then the new people were supposed to take me on with the sale of his new company. And they tried. I mean, they legitimately tried, but I never had the same chemistry with them that I had with him. And I would put this thing down. I'd get very busy and doing concerts and stuff, and I'd walk away from it, always with it, nagging me in the background. Finish me.
Yeah.
And, it took a little more than that kind of begging for me to get it done. But when March rolled around this last year, it seemed like a great time to bear down and just finish it up and be done with it.
Right.
So that happened. And then I've also decided that I would start lightening my load of memorabilia that I've collected over the years. So I'm starting to sell off some of that. I've had a few auctions where, I just collected so many things over the years. I mean, these guys are signing 5 and 10 and 20 things for me at every show.
Right.
I would either give out to people that work for me if they wanted it, or other people at the hall, or, we'd share it with people, but I inevitably would end up with more, which was great. But over the years, I had to address all that. So I bought another house to store things in. Right. And I've got 5, and I have 5 storage units.
Oh my gosh.
Plus I had a 6,000 square foot office that my office was in, that I completely covered from ceiling to floor with stuff.
Oh my gosh.
Also had the Dodge Theater in downtown Phoenix, 5,000 seat auditorium, where I had 500 pieces in there, including 100 guitars framed on the walls.
Oh, wow.
And then I also stocked Alice Cooperstown, Alice's restaurant that I was a partner in with him and Shep for 18 years. And I had over 300 pieces there. And all of those things came, the Dodge thing, the stuff came out of the Dodge in 2011 when I split up with Live Nation.
Right.
So I've been an independent promoter again for another 10 years. Since I left Live Nation. So I went about 7 years on my own, then 10 years for when I sold, which included 5 years of Live Nation.
Okay.
And then 10 years as Danny Zelisko Presents, which I'm at the best because, I can enjoy what I do now again and not have some kid who's never risked a dime of his own money telling me what to do or making policy without my approval.
Right.
After a while, I think after you do X amount of thousands of shows, you deserve to make your own decisions. And that's what I'm doing. And it's, unfortunately, I don't get to deal with all of the top drawer, top line, giant acts that I used to, but I deal with the best that are available. Now, my regular clients are people like Alan Parsons and Frankie Valli and Jackson Brown, and Eric Clapton and AC/DC and the Dead and Bobby Weir. I've got a George Lopez. I got a great lineup of great names. Those are just a few, but there's a good couple hundred names of great artists that I still have great relationships with to this day, and they're not the type of people that just look at the money or how do I make life easier by not dealing with people who live in the towns that I visit.
Right.
These other promoters, the national promoters, they definitely have people that live in every city that they do shows in. It's going to be interesting to see how it comes back.
Yeah.
And how many people they actually employ. Because it's, everybody's just taken such a massive hit. without having any income and trying to figure out how to keep good people, on your payroll or have it so that when it's time to come back, they come back,
Yeah, because, you guys haven't been able to do anything, generate any income, and the employees need to, feed themselves and their families. They got to find other jobs.
Yep.
So, well, you mentioned that you have a huge collection of memorabilia. I'm assuming that's sports and music.
Correct.
What is the crown jewel of your collection? What is never going into your auction?
Well, I don't know about never, but I've got about 20 in the late 90s. I bought a signed 1965 Gibson acoustic signed by those 4 guys from England.
Oh, wow.
And I really like that piece.
Yeah.
But I mean, everything's for sale.
Everything's got its price.
So somebody wants to come across with a nice check, or I prefer cash. I'd be happy to consider it.
Well, once this big podcasting money starts to roll in, I'll be in touch with you.
All right, good idea.
Well, Danny,
I hope so.
I've kept you for a while, man. Thank you so much for spending so much time and telling me some great stories, man. It's been a blast.
No problem. My pleasure. Make sure you tell everybody they can find this thing at dzplive.com.
Yes. And is there a social media presence that people can follow you on as well?
Oh, yeah. We're on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. And let's see. Oh, and Amazon has a Kindle version of it.
Oh, cool.
And another part, I think you could get it here, but I had to have the 2 different types, styles of books that I made. One I made is more like a coffee table size.
Okay.
And then the other one that Amazon has is a normal book size, but bigger than a normal book, but that style. Mm-hmm. And they charge a little bit more for that book. But so you can get the book or the Kindle through Amazon, but the actual original book that we made up, which is a coffee table, bigger size book, that's through the dzplive.com.
Okay, and you said that the shipping is included in that price, right?
Correct.
Excellent. Oh, man. Well, I'm enjoying reading my copy of it, and it's got so many great stories. I would love to sit here and talk to you about all of them, but that would kind of defeat the purpose of you writing a book. So thank you for spending so much time.